Welcome to Writer's Block, everybody. My name is Miriam O'Gara. I am the Keltress, a professional singer, actor, and broadcaster. And I am very, very, very honored to be able to welcome to my show today the iconic, the legendary George Chakiris. George has written his memoir, published this March in 2021. It is a wonderful memoir titled, very aptly, My West Side Story. So, if you've got a daughter who's a singer, daughter or a son who's a dancer, if you are simply a lover of movie magic, then this book is for you, because that's exactly what he focuses on. So, without further ado, please welcome the iconic and the wonderful George Chakiris. Well, hello everybody, and you are most welcome to this week's edition of Writer's Block. Now, the gentleman I'm about to speak to now, I'm sure you all recognize him. His silhouette has not changed, that incredible, iconic silhouette of the dancer that we all recognize, and certainly my age group recognize as Bernardo.
Yes.
Leader of the Sharks.
Yeah.
In that
right.
wonderful, wonderful musical, West Side Story.
Yeah.
You're very welcome to the show. George,
well,
thank you.
I'm so glad to have the opportunity to talk to you. And that we're miles away, but we're in the same room at the same time. I love that. Anyway, so, with West Side Story, we all absolutely loved what we were doing, and we've all been so grateful to be with each other and to get to be part of this incredible piece. I mean, how lucky was that for all of us,
It's just immortal, isn't it?
It is. It seemed, a couple of nights ago, with Turner Classic Movies, we get to see older movies, and thank God that we do, because there's such incredible pieces of movies from the past that are just extraordinary. I watched Singing in the Rain a couple of nights ago, and I'd seen it so many times, but to be reminded and see again what an incredible movie it is. I mean, it's a blessing to be able to visit these pieces again,
And the wonderful thing, I mean, I have to hold your book up here because I have it. I've read it cover to cover, and I was just enthralled. And you actually worked with Gene Kelly twice, didn't you?
Yeah, once in the chorus of Brigadoon, and then the second time was in a French musical called The Young Girls of Rochefort with Catherine Deneuve and her sister, Françoise Doliac. It was a lovely movie, and yes, Gene was there. We worked on that together. So I got to work with him in two different ways, both wonderful ways, because I'm reminded as we speak about him how incredible he was.
Yes.
I mean, it's so I was lucky to be around him those two times, really.
And you mentioned very interestingly in the book, and this is one of the things I love about the way you've written this book, and we hear your voice very clearly in this memoir. And just so that I can go there for a split second with our viewers, what has happened is that George has this year released his memoir, and it is absolutely stunning. It's called My West Side Story.
Yeah.
And it is, talk about well-timed. My goodness, could it be any more well-timed?
Well, yes, it's kind of like a West Side Story year in a way.
Yes.
And it will culminate in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story in December. So it's an ongoing kind of venture, and I'm like everybody else. I'm anxious to see what he's done. I know he will do something wonderful, and it's really great to see it. Yeah.
And am I right in thinking that your very good friend Rita Moreno, of course, who played Anita, your girlfriend, Bernardo's girlfriend, she's in the movie, and she's an executive producer, I think, as well.
That's exactly right. She's in the movie. She's playing. I think I forgot the character's name, but it's a wonderful, wonderful idea. They're using her beautifully. Okay, I think of the character's name, but she is the widow. My understanding is she's the widow of Doc, and Doc in West Side Story, our West Side Story, had the drugstore. So she is playing his widow. So I guess she's in the drugstore now too. Well, we'll find out. But so it's and she's an executive producer as well. anyway, I look forward to see it, and you know, she's amazing. She's wonderful. So it'll be.
Oh, she's just
Yeah,
extraordinary. She's beautiful.
she is.
She's
She
so
is.
talented.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Oh, and
yeah.
she's got a great philosophy on life. I've been watching everything about her lately. She's just
Yes. Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
You meant when we were talking about Jean Kelly there, I'm remembering that in your book, without wanting to give it all away because it
Yeah.
really is so good. And Lindsay Harrison is the person you collaborated
Yes.
with
Yes.
writing this.
Yes, she's a wonderful writer, and I'm so glad to have worked with her on this book and to now know her as a friend as well. She's a great writer, and she's a lovely person as well. You know,
It's
Lindsay.
very interesting that the whole collaboration ghostwriting experience. I think a good ghostwriter, I'm just speaking about this now from the context of this being writer's block. Um,
Yes.
you have I know you wrote large chunks of this, but a person who you're working with, even if you're telling, if you're speeding things up by telling the story,
Yes.
you've got to trust them. But I think they have to make sure that they keep your voice to the forefront. And that has happened right the way through this book.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's really, really lovely to hear, and that's a tribute to Lindsay and the wonderful writer that she is. You know.
And if I remember, because Alison Arngrim, I don't think would let anyone forget, she mentioned on a couple of interviews with you that you should do a
That's right.
memoir.
She did. Yeah, she did. Yes, I forgot about that. She did.
And you
Yeah.
said one day, someday, and someday
Yeah.
came.
Yeah, and it's funny how things happen without any planning of any kind. Sometimes things just happen, and the opportunity is there. So, and it's wise to take advantage of the opportunities when they are there. And this was a lovely opportunity for me. And again, it was, the thing that made it such a wonderful opportunity was working with a wonderful writer like Lindsay. That was a lucky. She's written wonderful books with other people. She did Tippi Hedren's book. Anyway, so she's a wonderful writer,
Oh,
and so that collaboration is really important to a book. You know. Yeah.
absolutely. She's well proved.
Yeah.
And wasn't it Harland Ball, your
Yes,
mutual publicist who
that's
made it
right.
happen?
See, I have to be reminded of everything. That's absolutely right. And Harlan is another. I'm so lucky to know these people because Harlan is incredible at what he does. But the thing that I keep adding, because it's important to me, is he's wonderful at what he does, but he's a wonderful person as well, and that to me makes a huge difference. You know?
Yeah, I've corresponded with him a couple of times now. I interviewed Alison,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and he has an immense reputation.
Yes, he does. Yeah, and he's earned it. You know, everybody. You know, I started collaborating with Harlan. It's been a few years now, and I didn't know who anybody in public relations was really, but I had friends. Melissa Manchester's sister knew of, was recommended, telling me who I should work with, and she recommended Harlan because he has such a wonderful reputation as a person as well. And that made a difference. Claudia, who Melissa's sister, said, work with Harlan, you'll love him. And it's true, I do. Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised. You know, you are in the book. You are immediately keen to marry up two things. I notice. You talk about your early life, but you also get to West Side Story very quickly. And one of the things you mentioned is that you don't like these memoirs where people have to wait ages before they actually get to one of the key movies, you know. And that's great. That's really great.
You know, the truth is, I did kind of get to West Side Story kind of early. I started working as a chorus dancer, in 1952, 53. And West Side Story, auditioning for Jerry Robinson, and then working for the London company was 1958. That's not very much time. So
Her
it wasn't.
Majesty's Theatre.
Yeah. So how lucky was that? I mean, it's sort of good fortune sometimes is unexpected.
I can actually imagine how you felt because I have stood on that stage. I have auditioned on that stage many times.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And it is
Oh,
really quite amazing. And I actually found backstage and the dressing rooms
yeah,
phenomenal as well, because
yeah,
the decor of the proscenium arch and all of that is
yeah,
continued backstage.
yeah, yeah.
It was
The-
quite an
I
experience.
yeah. Well, I love Her Majesty's because we worked there, and so it's part of my what I've been involved in, and so I've seen other things since at Her Majesty's and across the street at the Haymarket and
Yes,
theatre in London in general. I've spent quite a lot of time in London over the years as well.
you
So that's
did.
it's kind of like a second home, and I love England. I love the English nature. I love the English humor. I loved everything about it. Yeah.
I loved the way you said in your book, because this is a gentleman I had the honor, a sheer gentleman that I had the honor of interviewing as well, Richard Chamberlain. And you
Oh,
mentioned in the
Rich,
book that you actually rented his flat when you were
I
there.
exactly. Yeah, and I think somewhere late, I can't remember, later on, maybe in the 70s. Yeah, I was working on something, and I was going to work on something in London, and I thought, well, where will I stay? And I have a friend who's not here anymore, who was a good friend of Richard. And so he introduced me to Richard by phone, and he said, Richard has this place. Maybe you could talk to Richard about renting it. And I spoke to Richard very brief. I'd never met him. I've met him since, but I'd never met him. And he said, yeah, he was very generous, very gracious. So I did get to rent. It was a two-story flat, wonderful, overlooking Hyde Park Gardens. It was a great place. And yes, I got to talk to Richard at that
And
time. And
that,
then,
yeah,
yeah,
wonderful. It's a wonderful area. I've walked around it so many times over the
yeah,
years. I lived there
yeah,
for 10 years.
yeah.
Beautiful place. Beautiful
Yes, it,
place.
it is. It is. Yeah.
Your, if I could just quote one of the things that you say,
Okay.
you mention on page 201, of course, just to point out to everybody, of course, George's training started when he was very young. I mean, you were 19, were you, when you started
Uh,
at the American
yeah.
School of Dance?
That's right. Yeah. 19. I
Um,
took my first class.
oh, gosh.
Yeah.
You say, I was born with an extraordinary passion that at times opened every door that might have stayed closed without it. A passion for dancing.
Well, yeah. It wasn't a conscious thought at the time, but when you look back at how you felt over the years, that's a really important word. And I think,
Passion.
of course, I've known so many people in the business, but of course, many people in the dance world, and in the dance world, because it's physical and it's difficult. So passion is really important to just get through it. But it's a great word, and I love it because I think without it, you can't do. You need passion to be able to accomplish anything and to feel that way about what you're doing.
And George, as the decades rolled on and your career went from chorus to then becoming a principal actor and dancer, and
Yeah,
then all the transitions that can follow a stage
yeah,
performer and screen performer, did the passion consistently return for the work?
yeah. The passion is always there, but
So it never
each
waned.
no, it doesn't because it doesn't. The difference is that some pieces of material are are mean more to you than other pieces of material. So one role in something doesn't always measure up to the same sort of passion level as another role. That happens to everybody. Some pieces, some things that we're involved in are grab us personally in a different way than other pieces. So it changes um, from project to project. But yes, but no matter how you feel about a role, you have to have passion all the time, really, all the time.
You know, in this iconic image,
Uh,
I don't know if you can see it there,
I can see it. Yeah, thank you.
it has
Yeah,
utter passion going through it.
uh, oh,
Utter
you know,
passion. Look at
I'll-
the
yeah, yeah,
geometry of
yes.
the
We,
actual move.
yeah, the very first thing that we filmed in West Side Story was this sequence, the prologue, and I passion Jerome Robbins was on the other side of the camera directing all of this. Passion was very important to him. He never said it, you just knew it. So this reminds me of how passionately we all felt doing this. I mean, I can see it, and it gives me goosebumps to remember it, you know.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
like Jerome Robbins, hugely loved. I believe many of the dancers who were selected for the movie already would have been in the musical versions, maybe not all.
Some of them were, that's right. Not all, but yeah, some of it's from the London companies, Eddie Verso, the couple of fellows from the London company, from the New York company as well. I don't know how many were from theater productions, but there were a number, yeah.
And of the great choreographers, I mean, he was also a joint director of the movie, and I think wasn't he only the second ever to win who was a joint director?
Yes,
Robert Wise.
with Robert Wise, that's right. You know, when I think of those two men working together, it's a beautiful collaboration because they're very different in temperament and in the way they work. Of course, Mr. Wise was the movie man. He knew
Yes.
movie making, and of course Jerry was, to me, the passion. When I think of West Side Story, and using the word passion, to me, again, it wasn't a conscious thought, but when I think back, all the passion throughout this film comes from him. It comes from him because I think, you know, he was such a perfectionist. And also in terms of his choreography, he choreographed for character. So what Bernardo, the way Bernardo moved was very different from the way Riff moved and so on. But Jerry was famous for that no matter what he did.
How did you do this, George? I mean, as I can't believe that you made that transition. You were 2 years playing Riff.
Yeah.
You know that choreography like inside out.
Yes, absolutely. You know, so I've been asked, what did it feel like to play Bernardo after having played Riff? And I tell you, doing the theater production at Her Majesty's Theater for a year and a half before the film, I was playing opposite the original Bernardo, whose name is Ken Leroy. He originated that role. And so I watched him for a year and a half, 8 times a week. So without trying to, it was osmosis. I was learning.
Yes.
So I thanks to watching his incredible performance, it of course was helping me in mine. So it wasn't the sort of break in thinking of Riff and then having to think Bernardo. It was sort of easy transition because I was so familiar with everything in the theater, all the parts.
All the parts. And,
Yes.
and can you tell us whether, in your opinion, was a lot of the choreography from the stage musicals for the key numbers, was that kept intact? Or was it radically altered for the movie?
No, it was absolutely kept intact. The thing that was different in specifically in the from the stage to the film was the American number, because in the stage version the American number is done by just the girls, but in the film it included the boys, so that meant more staging. So that number is expanded, so to speak, because it included the guy, and that was what it's one of the things that made that number musical sequence so beautiful in the film, because it was between the guys and the girls. It was playful, it was funny, it had something to say. But again, and we had such a great time doing it. We had so much fun. We worked really hard, but we had a great time. We had fun.
And one of the things that has come home just listening to Russ Tamblyn, Rita Moreno, yourself talking is another word that you throw out there time and time again is the magic. And at the beginning of your book, you're very keen to point out that you loved the magic of the movies. You would sometimes skip class at school to just literally go to the movies.
Yeah. Well,
particularly Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
All of that. I can, I never saw any of the black and I had not when I was a kid. I've seen any of the black and white musicals that Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers had done. But when the Barters of Broadway was coming, yeah, I couldn't wait to see it, and I was so afraid that something was going to happen and I wouldn't get to see it. But finally, I was living in Long Beach with my family, and I finally got to see the Barters. I took the bus downtown to see it, loved every second of it, and on the bus on the way home, my throat started to feel a little bit fun. I got the mumps. So I saw that movie just in time. But yes, so loving to see those people do their work on screen. Fred Astaire, all of them, Gene Kelly. I mean, even I still get the same thrill, and maybe even more so now, because I really pay attention to what is it actually doing, and it's just mind-boggling when you really not just entertainment. You think you can see, and you can see because you become professional yourself, so you can appreciate at a deeper level what it is they're actually doing and what they've achieved, which is just so amazing, and so beautiful.
And to be counted yourself among the top elite dancers of the last 60 years, which is really the vehicle that this show gave you.
Yeah.
It took you there.
I never think of, well, absolutely. Again, I think I said it early on, and I keep saying the same thing again. You know, West Side Story, because it was such a beautiful story, theater production to begin with, and film. So everyone who was ever connected in any way with the film, including Leonard Bernstein, that's what they're remembered for more than anything else they've ever done, because West Side Story was such a worldwide success and continues to have a life. So again, it's just serendipitous and so lucky that I got to be part of it.
Oh, absolutely. Now, like, I might be wrong, please correct me, but reading the book, I have a real sense that from around 1957, things started to speed up and heat up quite a bit. You've had some extraordinary, I forgot you were in Brigadoon. I mean, and that's a movie I reference a lot. I mean, there are wonderful movies, White Christmas. There's no business like
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I see that. Yeah.
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Yeah.
And I mean, look at you here. I mean, stand out. Talk about. No wonder all the girls were writing in and saying, "Who is this?"
Yeah, that was one of my favorite credits, so to speak, is to be able to say that I was one of the guys behind Marilyn Monroe in that movie, in that number. I mean, how lucky is that to just been one of the guys behind her? I love the fact that that was another lucky experience as well, because of who she ultimately became, extraordinary.
Yeah, and you describe her work ethic and her kindness.
Yes, yeah.
I won't tell the stories, it's not fair, but they are wonderful, wonderful stories that you tell, and you show great respect. And this was something that struck me about the memoir itself, in that sometimes you'll come across memoirs and they are name dropping constantly, and they have no purpose no rhyme, no reason for it at times. Your book is one of gratitude. Your memoir, when you talk about Elaine Stritch, when you talk about all the different people that you've worked with, you put in a paragraph after explaining how you met them and their place in that time of your life. You then write a paragraph to them saying, "Thank you." And that's lovely. That's beautiful.
Well, and yeah, it is. Thank you to so many people, and again, just to me, I was again in that being one of the behind Marilyn Monroe. That was I was a chorus dancer, but I look upon that as a very lucky circumstance. First of all, I got to Jack Cole, the choreographer. I got to work with him once, and that just working for him was amazing. In the course of time, I've been able to be around some fabulous people, professionally and personally. Yeah.
You mentioned Jack Cole, and you mentioned Robert Alton almost in the same breath at times. There's very close collaborations there.
Yes. Jack Cole, his style was very, very different to Robert Alton. And sometimes the dance, I remember working as a chorus dancer, the two choreographers and the kids always wanted to work for were Jack Cole and Robert Alton. And I got to work for both of them. So, and I loved every second of it. Looking back in the early 50s, just being a chorus dancer, I look back on that time as one of the most beautiful times of my life because it was simple, it was creative, and I got to be around such amazing people. Yeah.
And you also mentioned Michael Kidd because he recommended you as well, didn't he?
Well, Maddox, who was one of the great male dancers in any place, he was hired to be one of the brothers in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and Matt knew me from class and that kind of thing. So he was already working on that film with Michael Kidd, and Matt called me and said he wanted me to come and audition for Michael Kidd and I was thinking I was going to do another number, be used in another number in White Christmas that hadn't been done yet. So I was eager to do that instead. I didn't know if any of it would happen, but to make a long story short, I ultimately said no to Matt, and I didn't like saying no to him a couple of times about audition for Michael Kidd. The third time I couldn't say no. I didn't have the heart to say no to Matt. So I did audition for Michael Kidd, and I gave a horrible audition, and he didn't use me, thank God, because then I got to be one of the four guys behind Rosemary Clooney in that number she does in White Christmas. Funny. Yeah.
You were standing in all the right cues at all the right times.
Yeah, I sort of did things right once upon a time.
Absolutely. And another thing that I thought was really lovely when you were speaking about your father and your mother.
Yeah.
And you speak, I mean, oh gosh, they seem to have been two really darling people.
My parents were such extraordinary people. They both were from a Greek village in Turkey. They didn't meet there. They met later in this country. And my grandfather went back to find two girls to marry his two boys. It's these two people who were brought together in an arranged marriage who just happened to be perfect. And had such a wonderful life with each other, and they were such beautiful parents, loving. We were loved, and we didn't think about it. Which, looking back, I love and some of the kids would say, "Did your parents like the idea that you wanted to be in show business, so to speak?" And a lot of them say, "My parents never wanted me to do that. They would try to discourage them." Yeah. My parents were supportive to all of my brothers and sisters and I for anything we wanted to do. So the fact that they were as loving as they were and supportive was, I found out later, was a great blessing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, you mentioned as well, talking about your father, you mentioned he was the most devoted, most responsible man I've ever known. My father was an irresistible combination of dreamer and realist.
Yes.
Hard-working man with a beautiful singing voice and the soul of an artist.
Yeah.
So do you think you're like him?
Well, I think I am in some ways because I'm not as realistic a lot of the time as I should be and should have been. But and I'm a bit of a dreamer, but I'm glad about that because I think that those, you have to dream. You have to dream, you have to hope. So all of that is a benefit.
And look at that dream. Look at that.
Yeah.
And a Golden Globe the same year, 1962.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me because it's nice to see that. Thank you.
It is. And gosh, you are so instantly recognizable. You have hardly changed. And I wondered how much of that is to do with the fact that you make a point of mentioning at the end of the book that you always took a dance class.
Always, yes. Well, it's I'm about to call it an addiction. It's not, but it is in a way, because whether I was working as a dancer or not, a day without class, there was something wrong with a day without class. Even Sundays, I always went to class, and I think that's true of a lot of dancers because it just engages you in a way that nothing else does. And so, and you're just in your state of mind. If you take a class, everything feels better. Everything about life feels better because of the way you use yourself physically and mentally in a dance class. It's so taxing in the most wonderful way, and it asks a lot of you, but you don't think about that. Again, passion pulls you into it, and it carries you through. And again, I'm just repeating myself. Sorry, but yes, a day without class or a week without class. No matter where I was, if I was traveling somewhere, I remember going to Spain to work on something. First thing I did when I got there, after I unpacked, was to find a place to take class. I didn't speak Spanish, and when I went to a class and everybody else was Spanish, we all understood each other anyway because we're all there for the same reason. So anyway, yeah, a day without class wasn't a day. I always had to take class, always, yeah.
So it was like your inner doctor keeping you well.
Yeah, yeah.
My
Sorry?
goodness.
Yeah.
Maybe like your inner doctor keeping you well, in harmony, disciplined.
Yes, and it does keep you well, basically. It pretty much does, physically and mentally, yeah. Yeah.
When you talked about the movies, you made a point. That this is referring to your love of movies as a child as well. You mentioned that it wasn't an escape for you. It was a destination.
That's, yeah. I want
Imagine.
that's Lindsay. Those are Lindsay's words, but she puts it beautifully because that's exactly what it feels like. Yeah, it's
A destination.
it's a destination. You know, I can remember when I was in school, high school, and in junior high school, and in high school. Some days I would be walking to school, and just in that trip, I'd suddenly stop and go downtown and to see a movie. So my destinations changed, and seeing a movie was a beautiful destination. And it's because it's all imagination, and it's all so heartfelt and so beautiful. So yeah, it is a destination. It really is a destination.
Now, I was fascinated by, well, what you're doing recently.
Yeah.
And what you're doing recently is not that recent in the sense that if I think about it, let me just go in and see if I can bring this up. So you have, let me just go into it here, if I may.
Look at this room.
Your room looks as though it's full of erudite books, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. You know, this costume sketch back here, that a Greek guy, a Greek guy whose name Vasilis Fotopoulos. He was the costume and scenery designer for Zorba the Greek, and he was 28. Yes, and he won an Academy Award for his work. And because I was Greek, he sought me out, and I got to meet him. And that sketch there is something that he did, and he gave me years ago. And that's from a wonderful scenic designer who is an Academy Award winner too. Yeah, it was great. Small
fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah,
I honestly, I just look at your website here, and you've got some beautiful, beautiful work, but also just coming to something that you've been involved with more in the last 20 years is your jewelry.
Yeah.
And if I could just go into this for a second, you've got collections here that, I love them. I particularly love your GC collection, logo collection.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
Okay. Wow,
and your
look
links,
what you can do.
Your links with Japan as well.
Yes, got lots of time spent in Japan over the years. Lots of time. I love Japan. And by the way, my book is being translated into Japan for the Japanese market, so that we just found that out. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I like these. I call it the GC logo. Obviously, it's a GC logo, but one of the things that is so wonderful about jewelry, I suppose anything creative, that just one link of that design, I've been able to use it in a ring, in a money clip,
I love the
cufflinks.
money clip.
Yeah, so there are many ways to take one simple thing and use it in for different pieces. Most designers do that. They don't just use it one way; they use it multiple ways. And you know, you can see that that's what I've done here
That
as
is
well.
absolutely wonderful. And you've
Yeah.
got various different collections here. So people, please
Yes.
go and have a look at this. It's absolutely gorgeous. And some of the pieces look very, very heavy. The belt looks really heavy.
They're
It's one of
substantial. Yes, they are. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much.
There are so many different parts. This is a very well thought out website, and just the
Thank
most
you.
gorgeous work.
Yeah,
Just beautiful, beautiful work. And
the
you know,
lotus. Yeah.
it's isn't it strange though how creativity will seek to find another way through. You know,
That's
you might
absolutely
close
right.
down one phase of your life and it seeks to show itself somewhere else.
Yes. Well, you know, Anthony Quinn comes to mind. Gosh, so many different people come to mind because they have we know them and in their careers doing one thing, but almost everybody dabbles in other creative outlets as well. Painting, me jewelry making, and I love painting as well. So your gifts and your inspiration doesn't stop in one place. It keeps moving, and there's such gratification in anything artistic and creative. You know, no matter what it is. I love the thing I love about jewelry is once you've actually done a piece, the beauty is you can hold something in your hand, and I don't know why there's satisfaction in that as well.
There is this huge satisfaction in it,
Yeah.
and also a feeling of growth. And I like also the fact that in the book you make the point at the very beginning of mentioning that, you know, okay, you're going back over your past, but you
Yeah,
still have your present and you still
yeah.
have your future.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
you have embraced I mean, gosh, there are great interviews out there and they're all very recent, and you have embraced this format very
yeah,
well.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been, you know, I mean, look, the fact that I'm able to talk to you. I mean, to me, that's so amazing. It's such, and I love being able to talk to you. So it's everything is another opportunity, I mean, the fact that we're miles apart is beside the point. We're in the same room, and I can talk to you, and I find that so wonderful.
It is wonderful. And one of the other things that I just wanted to bring forward, if I can, is your singing.
Oh
Because
yes,
oh
yeah.
gosh, what a wonderful voice.
God, thank you so much. You
Do
know,
you
of
still
course, when
sing?
not the way I used to. I'm so, you know, singing is really interesting because singing, to keep your singing voice, you really should sing a little bit every day. Because what happens with time, the vibrato, that sort of tremulous, natural thing in the voice, you lose it, and so your tone becomes just straight, and that doesn't, you don't create a good sound that way. So when you ask me about singing now, I can sort of sing, but um, I can't sing the way I used to, and but you can do something different with material than you did then. But I still love to be able to create a nice sound. That's important to me. Yeah.
Well, as a dancer, you'll understand the concept of muscle memory.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
do feel that it's there when it comes to voice as well.
I think
Um,
so. Yes.
you know, one
Yeah.
of the things I noticed listening to your recordings, and you
Yeah.
did wonderful. You recorded in French
Yeah.
albums
Oh
with
my God! Of
Polydor
course. Yeah. Yeah.
and Capital, of course, Capital as well,
Capital.
Capital
Yes.
Records.
Yeah. the,
And
the Capitol days were the best. Although my very first album was an album that I made while I was playing Rip in London. It was a Gershwin album, and I still you can't go wrong with Gershwin. So I think it's still a kind of good album now as well. But so I did one album. My first album was made for a small company in London, but then eventually I was with Capitol Records, and there's something music to be in a studio with a big orchestra, those beautiful arrangements, and then you hear the conductor gets up and starts it, and he rehearses the strings, and then the percussion, and then the horns, and so on, and then he eventually puts it all together. So you're in a room with all those musicians creating beautiful music before you ever add your voice. It's just a thrilling, moving experience. Talk about passion. It's music. And hearing it all come together with all those people in the same room together was such a beautiful time.
Well, I would urge people to go onto YouTube and listen to George's albums, because one of the things I noticed as a singer myself, one of the things I noticed, and I do teach as well from time to time.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
Sometimes it is very difficult to get people to finish a phrase and still have air to spare. It sounds very basic, but it isn't always that easy to do.
Yeah.
Good dancers tend to do that very well because they're used to taking their postures right.
Yeah.
They're used to taking air into their backs.
Yeah.
And you have to breathe deep into your back. As people think about breathing into the abdomen, you breathe deep into your back as well.
Yeah.
And then you find a lot more pockets of air. And dancers tend to have very little problem doing that. So you finish your phrasing wonderfully in all of your songs.
Thank you. Well, how nice to hear that you're a singer and that you teach singing as well.
Well, I don't do it too often. I put repertoires together for people who have good voices and they want, but at the same time, to be able to show someone how to cut out all of the unnecessary and just demystify it.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to be able to do. But then you listen to someone like yourself who has a dance background, and you see how the physical connects with the voice, because you were in such physical condition, good condition when you were recording those albums.
Yes.
And it's no wonder that Nanya Mouskouri approached you and said, I'd like you on my show.
Yes, wow, yes, meeting her quite accidentally and getting to work with her. She was, talk about a voice, and
I love that.
Yes, glorious voice, and a glorious person as well. I'm reminded just talking to you that I got to work with her as well. I mean, but singing, when people don't, I think of me first because of the rest of the story associated with dance and not singing, because I didn't have to sing in West Side Story, but singing was a really important part of my life as well. And because of that, I got to do, I think back to when I did the national company of a Stephen Sondheim show called Company with Elaine Stritch.
With Elaine Stritch?
Yeah. And of course, the primary, the thing that being cast as Bobby, the character Bobby, in that show, the main thing was singing, not dancing. So I got. And I was, because you, as a singer yourself, I remember working with a vocal coach when I was rehearsing a company in New York. His name was Keith Davis. And one of the things that he tried to teach all of his students was singing from chest to head without a break. Yeah, and you know that one. Yeah. And it's you have to learn it, but when you find it, it's such an asset. Yeah.
Oh, it's such an asset. Absolutely, it is. And that was 1971, wasn't it, with Elaine Stritch?
It was.
In Company, and oh my gosh! In fact, you've got you would have sung a lot, because what was it? Camelot in 1980, My Fair Lady in 1981.
Yeah.
Guys and Dolls, 1974. So your stage career with regard to using voice and dance together.
Well, yeah, and also the wonderful things about those, because we have lots of theaters across the country, just as there are in England as well. So the opportunities to keep working in theater were always there, and that's a great a different way to be, not a different way to be, but an extraordinary exercise and a way to use yourself in the theater as opposed to film or recording. But by the way, I mentioned the word Elaine Stritch, and I go crazy because I'm so crazy about her. I'm going to intervene something very, very quickly. My sister told me, because I love things that Elaine has said over the years that I remember. And my sister brought to my attention something that Elaine Stritch was, and it's this. Elaine Stritch said, it's just one little thing. She said, give me a bottle of vodka and a floor plan. I thought,
so she can find her way.
Well, and only that imagination could think of that. That's what I love about Elaine. One of the things I love about Elaine Stritch. I could talk about her forever. Yeah.
Well, she had a television series in the 70s, if I remember. I can remember
yes.
watching it on British TV.
Company.
Two's Company.
Yeah.
That's right.
With Donald Sinden. Yeah.
Donald Sinden, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my God, I remember that so well. That was wonderful.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful, yeah.
She was wonderful. Now, it's just, you've got, again, the links with Japan, just as you were selling in your jewelry in Japan, you also did some Japanese, very unusual, a really, really, what was the name of was it 1981 White Butterfly Diary?
Yeah. It's the Madame Butterfly story, but it has a different title. And the Japanese producer, well, and I had to shoot. It was very, very well. It was for the theater, the Takadazuka Theater in Tokyo, which is an incredible theater. And when I was first approached about it, I thought, how will I know when I'm supposed to talk? You know, make a long story short, I based on the advice of a really wonderful friend of mine, a Japanese journalist. She knew all the people involved, and she said, all the people involved in this project are just wonderful. And she said, I think you should do it. So I did. And in the process, of course, you find your way and you learn what you have to learn. But it was a great experience. And I did have to speak Japanese. Later, I did a series for NHK based on the life of Lafcadio Hearn, who was a Western man who settled in Japan at the age of 40 or 41, married a Japan. Anyway, he became he was a writer, and so he was very famous in Japan. But the reason in that series, everything was in Japanese. I had to learn, and I devised a way of speaking Japanese, so it wasn't just phonetic. I knew what I was saying, but anyway, the challenges that have come just from the Japanese side in that regard. And the fact that I managed to do it, when I think back, I thought, wow, if somebody asked me to do that now, I think I'd be terrified. But having done it, I think, well enough, was just a different way to be in that culture and with those professional people. That was just beautiful.
That was a very, very demanding project, and you have to then face a Japanese audience.
Yes.
That is very tough. Both yourself and Richard Chamberlain, I think, have that in common. He did Shogun, and that was so demanding.
And what a beautiful series that was.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Yes,
it was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, I just one thing as I wind up here with you, because you've been so gracious giving me your time today. There were so many eureka moments in the book, but I had to have a quick giggle when I thought about your conversation at the end, where you're talking about wrapping up in an overcoat and going out to your either your dance class or going into rehearsal, and people would look at you sometimes aghast and say, why are you wrapped up in that coat? It's about keeping warm, isn't it, as an artist?
Yes. Well, to me, I didn't. When you take a ballet class, in the course of the class, with the exercises, you warm up, of course. But I always wanted to be warm before the class started. So I would make sure that I would take a hot shower bath before I left the house, and then put on a coat to stay warm till I got to the class, and then to me, being warm was important because it helps you stretch more than anything. And stretching is an important part of the dance and exercise as well. So to me, putting on a coat, even if it looked silly in the middle of summer, was important to me just because I wanted to stay warm for the class.
Well, I could identify with it. As soon as I saw it, I had to laugh. I said, people used to ask me if there was something psychologically wrong with me, that I was wearing this heavy coat when I shouldn't have. I thought it was great to hear that. So listen, folks, if you're a dancer or a singer or an actor and you're on a drafty stage, there's some good advice. Do you have a couple of other pieces of advice that you could offer young performers or even us older ones that would stand out in your mind?
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me when you ask that is, and also for younger people as well, is for me, I have found that when whether I was conscious of it or not, when I paid attention to my instinct, I almost always made the right move. So I think it's important for all of us to pay attention to what they call our inner voice or whatever, to our instinct, because it really guides you. So that's one of the first things, maybe the most important thing that comes to mind, because no matter what you're doing, if you really listen to your instinct, you pretty much can be okay, whether it's personal or professional or anything.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Oh my goodness. Well, there are so many things I could have plucked from the book and discussed with you. You've been so gracious with your time, and I would appeal to you, get with a pianist, please.
Okay.
Singing voice.
I would love to do that. I think I will do that, because singing is glorious. It's just glorious.
Singing's glorious, and I can tell just looking at you, you're in very good nick. So that voice will come back. It's practice, and sing. Start by, excuse me, I'm giving you advice. It's terrible.
I'll take it.
The repertoires, go back and just keep singing the repertoires.
You're absolutely right. That makes sense. Exactly. Thank you. And coming from you, knowing something of your background, you speak because you know.
Well,
you know the difference.
It's easy to forget that the voice does come back. It actually comes back better than sometimes leg muscles and arm muscles.
Wow.
And I am just so grateful to you for coming on today. Thank you so much, George. George Chakiris, everyone. Aren't we so fortunate to have had him on the show today? Listen, this is the most beautiful memoir. Absolutely stunning memoir. Very unusual. Full of advice, full of eureka moments, full of gratitude. And I think we should thank you for this. Christmas, folks, if you're a singer, a dancer, an actor, it's for you. And even if you know one, get it for them. This is something you'll have forever. Thank you so much for writing it.
Gosh, thank you so much for spending your time with me as well. Thank you. I really
Someday happened, and you wrote it.
Yes.
Someday happened. George, thank you so much for joining us on Writer's Block.
Thank you, and best wishes to you, for goodness sake. Absolutely. Yeah.